The early Morbius reviews are in, and they're pretty much what you're expecting.
Oh.
We were all kind of hoping to be pleasantly surprised when they pushed the movie. Well, they found a really good way of like making the pushing it back again seem like it was going to be something good.
Can I pause and say, what is Morbius? Because I don't actually remember.
It's a vampire.
It's a vampire movie based on a Marvel character. Played by Jared Leto. I really did just similar with yesterday, where I picked topics that I knew would kind of make Dane sad, and I was explaining to Lydia. I said I'm growing to be very cynical in that I read something that I know Dane is going to hate, and I'm like, this is going to be great on the show. He's going to love. Well, I'm going to love.
Such a puppet master now. You're just controlling our lives and emotions.
But I don't think this would like hurt Miracle's feelings. But I think she was hoping that this movie was going to get good reviews. That was.
I wasn't hoping. I was just hoping maybe it's a movie that I can actually watch and with.
Well, I mean, but maybe like good reviews might have bolstered that hope. Like maybe.
No, I watch all reviews and I don't care. If I want to watch it, I will watch it.
All right.
I watch spoiler reviews, for God's sakes.
So it says, this might sound a little bit harsh, but fans would probably be a lot more surprised at this stage where the upcoming comic book blockbuster Morbius to find itself drenched in critical acclaim and riding a huge wave of hugely positive buzz. Fans have been skeptical about the project since the very beginning, and none of the various trailers or TV spots have done much to change that perception. I would say that they're right about that. I would say that Spider-Man No Way Home did more to make people positive about this than any of their own trailers did, just because technically Morbius is a Sony-owned property, and technically Spider-Man on film is a Sony-owned property. He is not the property of Marvel or of Disney, because in the 90s, Marvel was very poor and had to sell off the film rights to a lot of their characters to stay afloat, a la X-Men, a la Spider-Man. Morbius.
It's kind of crazy. I feel like some of these like intellectual property rights are like trading cards.
That's what what it is like what it's whenever you watch like these we don't talk about it a lot on here because it's kind of boring, but whenever you watch like these like segments where these head of divisions come out and they talk about what they're doing, it's always in that ridiculous corporate speak that just it sounds like Mad Libs, like it's like, and that's where vertical integration for the product will be viable in the third quarter. And it always sounds like you're just like, do you all go to the same drone school to learn to talk like that?
Yes.
But it's always about IP. It's always about expanding IP because they don't care about creative ideas. They care about branding and they care about cross-platform marketing. And nobody cares about Spider-Man movies. Sure, it made $1 billion, but the toys and the shirts and the stuff for the kids, that's where the money is. Yeah. So they don't care if they want to tell the most serviceable, basic story they can while pleasing all of the right special interest groups. But what they really want is for it to be available in many forms over many platforms.
It's like that adage, like if you teach a man, if you bring a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you make merchandise that he can sell for the next 10 years, he'll feed all of the families for a lifetime.
That's I remember that saying. I think I found that on Pinterest once. Yes.
I have embroidered on a pillow.
Yes. So I just like every time they do this stuff, this character is kind of interesting because I believe they're already talking about Kraven the Hunter for the next project. And Morbius is kind of darker, but it's still so PG-13. So it's like what I loved about the trailers is it felt like I was watching a 2003 or 2004 superhero movie when they hadn't quite figured out how to make them yet. And I actually long for like bad movies from that time because they feel so innocent. Like I go back and watch objectively bad movies from that. Like I love Daredevil and Elektra, the movies, even though I know they're objectively terrible films. I don't care because I love it's like a weird form of like abusive nostalgia for myself. I'm like, sure, I hated this movie back then, but life was so much simpler.
Yeah.
And I feel like a movie like this kind of taps into that in a way. But it says the marketing has inevitably been slapped with plenty of Spider-Man and Venom references. That's another one to mention. Like Venom is a very successful Sony franchise. The first Venom did very well. The second one did pretty well, as despite being during the pandemic, which when they were still using that as the brunt of the excuses as to why these things live or die. If a movie does great, it's because the movie's great. If a movie does bad, it's because of COVID. But that movie did great. It says, Jared Leto's debut as the living vampire will be worth their time. But even the leading man half-jokingly revealed that he's got an excuse ready for should Morbius flop, which feels to me a bit like he's like hedging his bets. And he's like, but if it does fail, it's like when they make these properties like super politically correct, or I guess woke, if you like that term. I'm getting growingly sick of that term, but it's like they do it because then they know that when it fails, they can inevitably blame the customer. Well, they're like, well, this movie wasn't made for you, and then you don't go see it, and they're like, they didn't go see it because they're bigots, and that's like they fall back. They're always looking for their out as to why it didn't do well, and these reviews don't seem to be helping their cause. So from Brandon Matthews, it says he doesn't have a blue check, which is surprising me. It says in a discouraging yet expected development, GWW editor. I don't know what that website is, but it says Brandon Matthews claims that he hasn't been hearing great things regarding Morbius. We got this covered. Okay, so with press screenings recently being held at ahead of the review embargo being lifted, one thing you have to always pay attention to when stuff like this is coming out. Pay very close attention to when the review embargo lifts. If the review embargo doesn't lift until like a couple of days before the movie comes out, it's a strong indication that your movie's gonna be pretty bad, because it means they were holding the critics from releasing their bad reviews until right around the time.
How do they do that? Like, do they have an agreement?
Yeah, they have to sign non-disclosures or
to like see it in advance.
If it's a press screening, yeah, they have to sign it. So it's heard from several journalists who've seen the film already, junket purposes, that it's boring and uncalculated, no consistency except that it's bad. Good moment here, good in there, and 2 or 3 Easter eggs, but otherwise just watch it when it gets home. And then he makes it says.
So they're saying we shouldn't waste our money. Just wait until it's like uploaded on streaming.
Yeah, wait till it goes to. I guess this would be so. What does Sony use for streaming? Or they're just all over the place.
I think they're all over the place, but mainly Hulu.
Yeah. So, but we also have to use the reverse correlation, where if the journalists hate it, that probably means that we will like it. So.
What if the journalists hate it and you guys hate it? Like, what if it's just all around?
That does happen sometimes, and it feels like the world turns upside down.
So funny to have like a united front.
Yeah, you're just like it's like the enemy of my enemy.
Are we still gonna watch it? That's my question.
I would still like to go see it. Like I said, Sony has another reason I'm giving them leeway here. Sony's had a good track record. Spider-Man, even though that's technically them in Marvel, good. Venom, good. Venom 2, okay.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters Afterlife, really good. So Sony as a studio is doing a lot to do what DC hasn't done, which is they've built their credibility up where you're willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. So the reason the Batman is not going to make $1 billion is because the movies that came out prior to that, given that character in the last few years, haven't done well, and you have to re-earn that trust from fans. So it made a lot of money. It could have made more if the previous iteration wasn't so divisive and divided amongst fans and critics. So Sony as a studio has released a lot of good work lately. People are giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm hoping that will equate to more money, because if they make more money and the movie is devoid of politics and it's just a fun story, be it even if they're not reinventing the wheel, that's what you want. I don't want stories that reinvent the wheel. I want stories that tell basic good storytelling, good 3-act structure. If it's about a superhero, tell a heroic story about a guy either becoming who he's meant to be or saving the world for whatever the purpose is. Keep modern day politics out of it. Keep all of that out of it, and just tell good stories. And that's what we're hoping for here. But the reviews are just, it says the reviews just aren't that great. So that's the one that this guy was talking about. So it says, this is just from the direct. It just says, so is Morbius good or bad? This is just kind of their breakdown. It says, after years of unfortunate delays, this movie's been delayed not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, 6 times this movie has been delayed.
All because of COVID? Or?
No.
No.
That's what I'm saying. This was a problem before.
Do you think they missed their mark of releasing this movie? Because this movie is about a living vampire. So do you think if they release it during the time when they had Twilight, Teen Wolf, and any other like supernatural TV shows dealing with that,
the vampire craze is just kind of over?
Yeah. I think it's not hitting its mark because the vampire craze, like how you said, it's kind of over. People are done with it. How can you reinvent a vampire story other than that he's a superhero or an anti-hero?
When would you two, I don't know if you guys consider yourselves experts, when would you consider the death of vampire culture?
I think when the last Twilight movie.
Which would have been what, 2012?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I
2012
feel
was
like it
around
was
that
like
time.
vampires and a little bit of werewolves were cool, and then like zombies got really big.
Yeah. But
Like,
then
with
they
Walking
died
Dead
out.
and stuff, and now they died out, and now it's like I don't think we have a thing right now because people.
What's a
don't?
new thing?
Well,
that-
actually,
Well, then like Game of Thrones.
high fantasy is
Yeah, I was gonna say
Game
then
of Thrones,
like Game of Thrones
Witcher,
kind of took over, and that's more like medieval, historical,
but
like
then that died out. too.
mythological.
well, Witcher's still going on.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
that
think we're
died
on the
out.
we're in like sort of the peak to tail end of that, but it was like vampires and then zombies and then conversion.
Now we need vampire zombies.
or
That's
no.
Resident Evil territory.
Yes, well,
But-
that's and they can't do that well either.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get a bunch of space stuff. And like,
but we had
leaving
the
Earth.
space period.
I think it's gonna come back. Though.
Yeah,
it
every-
always like the space never takes on all the time. Like
Yeah.
I think we're about to get some more space, especially like no one wants to do a pandemic movie where the world is like over. Although there's been a couple,
I've been
but
watching.
then it's like maybe we'll just leave Earth for a little while because we can't say why, but things aren't going well.
Yeah.
I've been watching a show from 2014 to 2018 called The Last Ship, and it's about a virus breaks out and kills like almost all the population of the world, and America comes and develops a vaccine. Yes,
That's so
It
interesting.
just reminds me of something.
20
I
yeah,
can't say why.
it's really it's
Can't put my finger on it.
I love it. It's got the I think I've told this. I'm just like I love the rah American, like they're just like it's just so pro American military. I know that nothing no state organization is ever that virtuous, but by God, if I don't love it anyways when it's done in storytelling, because it's not about the group, it's about the inherent connection of people in a group together that I connect with, and that's totally what that show is about. It's like these guys, they're on a ship, and the world is basically coming. There's warring factions, and they take on evil people from
Yeah.
other. There's evil Russians, there's evil Colombians, there's evil Cambodians, there's evil Americans.
Well, and I think there's always been an interest in like dystopian, you know,
Yeah.
and like then we
That I would
hit
say that more than anything.
COVID, and people were a little bit like too close to home, but like. You know, A Quiet Place. Like again, if we have like the vampire days, maybe a little bit of werewolf, then we hit zombie mania, and then we hit like what term did you use? High fantasy.
I would say
Yeah.
dystopian would be a better example of what's held its own for the last 10 to 15 years, because zombies are dystopian. The 100 was a very popular show.
That was only good the first few seasons.
Revolution was a very underrated show that had Skeet Ulrich for
Right.
2 seasons, where like all the power in the there's all the power in the world mysteriously goes out.
There's Snowpiercer also, where it talked about different social class.
So if like
Jericho.
if this guy Morbius, like he's an anti-hero, and I think some dystopian narratives lend themselves to the anti-hero, right?
Yeah.
And like it sounds like you're totally like I think Miracle's right. Like it's
Yeah.
just that like zombie or vampire craze is not quite there,
And also
they didn't adapt it to meet some of the other.
Also, before it was Jericho had Skeet Ulrich and Revolution had Billy Burke. Before somebody eventually says, "You idiot! That's not who's." Okay, all right, I've made my collection. Continue.
Okay,
Thanks.
But yeah, also the anti-hero craze is they kind of missed it too. Like after they made Deadpool 2 and Logan, like basically they were kind of done with it. And then Harley Quinn kind of ruined it.
Punisher series has done well, but
Yeah, but that was like during the time of
Yes.
Deadpool. Like Harley Quinn kind of ruined the whole anti-hero thing.
yes, well, yes.
In my opinion, because like I get it, Harley Quinn, great. She's zany, she's cute. I get it.
Mr. J.
Mr. Jack.
Okay, so it says after years of unfortunate delays, the rumored first reaction seemed to suggest Sony still missed the mark with Morbius. Granted, this won't come as a surprise to many, as excitement for Sony's latest Marvel venture has been low since the beginning, as trailers failed to generate much interest. While the first critics sitting down for Morbius don't seem to be getting much enjoyment out of it, that doesn't necessarily mean audiences won't. You see, he's right. This guy gets it. Venom has a measly 30% ratings from among critics, but a comfortable 81% amongst audiences. This is a very common thing. Look at The Last Jedi. It goes the opposite way. Critics love it. Fans hate it. This instance proves that journalists and fans aren't always united. I think he means are almost always not They're very rarely united.
Brand new information to him.
Yeah, see, he's figuring it out. It's the promise of occasional good moments and several Easter eggs do offer some glimmer of hope. What they're missing from it is like, I think a lot of people, and maybe I'm projecting here a little bit, a lot of people will put up with a lot to get a movie that doesn't slam some type of agenda down their throat. If it's just a fun time at the movies, like it's almost like whenever we watch this stuff, I'm always like, but they didn't shove any like messaging down my throat, so I give it like an objectively average movie, like a much better score, because I'm just
You're just beating into submission by now.
I'm just glad I didn't have to hear about some lame intersectional identity politics ridden discussion the whole movie. So I'm like, I'll give it a B plus, and it's probably like a C at best. But I'm just like, oh, thank God. Like every time I watch something that, you're always like, unfortunately, when you do cover this stuff, you're hypersensitive to it. So if they can just give me 2 hours at the movies, it's just a good time. They're going to get a much higher score from me than I'm sure from a lot of people. So my hopes are very high that this movie still does well despite the...
I think we'll like it.
I
honestly think we're gonna like it because I like the trailer. It was like really pretty. I love like anything that's like that color palette, anything with black, green, and like that
dark
weird,
blues.
That dark blue. Like I like that color palette.
Well, and I think, like I said, we have a lot different expectations for these films than like I get annoyed at the amount of critics that still go into these things expecting it to be some type of high-end drama. And that can happen. There are movies that can do that. The Batman took its stab at doing humanist art house style superhero work, but not all of them need to be that. There is a market for just fun movies, and I think that we need to find our way back to that. So to do that, we will go watch Morbius.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm hoping it'll do well. I just don't know anymore.
We will see.
Everything that's good is crumbling
I
before my eyes.
I disagree because
You okay, Miracle? You okay?
I'm like secretly dying. And I'm like, oh no, I don't see color anymore.
Well, we'll see. We will see about it. I have higher hopes than these people did, than the journalists do.
Brett is the shining rainbow.
That is me. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.